How to text less and attract more. Most people think attraction is built by doing more. More texting, more effort, more attention. They believe that if they stay consistent, always present, always engaging, they will become more attractive. But in reality, the opposite is often true, because attraction doesn't grow from constant presence. It grows from balanced presence, from knowing when to engage and when to step back. Have you ever noticed how something feels more valuable when it's not always available? The same principle applies to communication. When you text too much, you remove space. And when you remove space, you remove anticipation. And when you remove anticipation, you remove attraction. So the real question is not, how do I text more effectively? The real question is, how do I text less without losing interest? And the answer lies in understanding something deeper: your relationship with attention. 1. Why texting more feels right, but is wrong. At first, texting more feels like the right thing to do. You like her, so you show it. You enjoy the conversation, so you continue it. You don't want things to fade, so you keep it going. It feels natural. But here's the problem. You're acting based on how you feel, not on how it affects the interaction. Here's a real-life scenario. You're having a great conversation, back and forth, good energy, everything feels smooth. Then it slows down. Instead of letting it pause naturally, you send another message, then another, then something random just to keep it alive. At that moment, you think you're helping the interaction, but what you're actually doing is removing its natural rhythm. And when rhythm is gone, everything starts to feel forced. 2. The power of space. Space is one of the most underrated elements of attraction, because space creates anticipation. Space allows thoughts to build. Space gives the other person time to miss the interaction. Here's a simple example. You text her. She replies. Instead of continuing immediately, you step away, not as a tactic, but because you have other things going on. Now, something interesting happens. She starts thinking. She wonders what you're doing. She notices the pause. She feels the gap. And that gap creates emotional movement. Without space, there is no movement. Everything becomes flat. 3. When texting becomes overexposure. When you text too much, you become overexposed. Everything about you becomes available too quickly. There's no mystery. Here's a scenario. You text throughout the day. Morning, afternoon, night. You share everything. What you're doing, what you're thinking, what's happening. At first, it feels like connection. But over time, it becomes predictable. She knows you're always there, always ready, always available. And when something becomes constant, it loses its impact, because value is often tied to rarity. 4. Real-life shift from constant to controlled. Let's look at a practical shift. Before, you wake up, you text her. You go through your day, you keep texting. You check your phone constantly. Now, you wake up, you focus on your day. You handle your priorities. You engage when it makes sense. Here's a specific example. You're at work or focused on something important. Your phone lights up. It's her. Instead of replying instantly, you finish what you're doing. Then you reply when you're actually free. Not as a strategy, but because your life comes first. That one shift changes everything, because now your behavior reflects balance. 5. Text with intention, not habit. Most people text out of habit. They pick up their phone without thinking. They send messages without purpose. But attraction grows when communication has intention. Here's a scenario. You're bored. You open your phone. You think about her. You send a message. Not because you had something meaningful to say, but because you wanted interaction. That creates low-value communication. Now compare that to this. You're going about your day. Something interesting happens. You think of her. You send a message related to that moment. Now the message has context. It has meaning. It feels natural. And that difference is felt. 6. Let her come to you sometimes. One of the biggest mistakes is always being the one to initiate. You start the conversation. You continue it. You keep alive. And over time, she gets used to that. She doesn't need to reach out because you always will. Here's a real-life example. You've been texting her every day. You always send the first message. Then one day, you don't. Now something changes. She notices the silence. She wonders why you haven't texted. And in that moment, you give her the opportunity to invest. Because attraction grows when both people participate, not when one person does everything. 7. Handle silence with confidence. Silence makes most people uncomfortable. They feel the need to fill it. They feel like something is wrong. But silence is not a problem. It's part of communication. Here's a scenario. You send a message. She doesn't reply for hours. Instead of reacting, you stay calm. You continue your day. You don't send extra messages. You don't overthink. That calmness shows confidence because you're not dependent on immediate response. And that independence is attractive. 8. Build a life that naturally limits texting. Expanded. The easiest way to text less is to have more going on in your life, not as a strategy, but as a reality. When you are busy, focused, engaged in meaningful things, texting becomes secondary. Here's a real-life picture. You have work, goals, social life, personal growth. Your day is structured. Your time is valuable. So when you text, it's intentional, not constant, and that creates a natural balance. Because now, you're not available all the time, not because you're trying to appear busy, but because you actually are. At the end of the day, texting less is not about holding back. It's not about playing games, and it's definitely not about ignoring someone you're interested in. It's about understanding value. Because in today's world, attention is easy to give. But that's exactly why it becomes less valuable. When someone has constant access to you, they stop noticing your presence. But when your attention is balanced, when it's given with intention, it stands out. Now think about your own behavior. How often do you reach for your phone without thinking? How often do you send messages just to fill time? How often do you look for interaction instead of focusing on your own life? That awareness is important. Because the moment you recognize those patterns, you can change them. You stop texting out of habit. You stop reacting to every notification. You stop making communication the center of your attention. And instead, you become more selective, more intentional, more in control. And when you are in control of your attention, everything else follows. Your messages feel different. Your timing feels different. Your presence feels different. You're no longer trying to maintain connection. You're allowing it to develop naturally, without pressure, without force. And that's what creates attraction, not constant communication, but meaningful interaction. Not always being there, but being there at the right moments. Because when your presence is not constant, it becomes noticeable. It becomes appreciated. It becomes something that stands out. So the next time you feel the urge to text, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, do I actually have something to say? Or am I just trying to create interaction? That one question can change everything. Because once you start choosing your actions, instead of reacting automatically, you move differently. And when you move differently, people respond differently. And that is how you text less and attract more.